Ms. Kamei, are you queuing for this? No. Joseph McClap, are you queuing for this? Go ahead.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to support the report of the public that presented by our chair. Mr. Speaker, this is an area that has been left aside for many years as it affects actually the debt stock in this country. Mr. Speaker, the CFS expenditure is a critical expenditure for actually repayment of our debts, pensions, salaries and allowance of commissions, and other miscellaneous services, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when we were doing this report, we realized that there is a deep error which requires some audit, Mr. Speaker. When we looked at budgets for those constitutional offices, it was actually exorbitantly exaggerated. It was higher in every vote. In fact, over 90% of the votes in salaries and allowances of constitutional offices were higher. Mr. Speaker, a case in mind is that of the Comptroller of Budget, Office of the Auditor General, Teacher Service Commission, among other constitutional offices whose resources were enhanced astronomically without due explanation on what has happened. Mr. Speaker, when we look at proposals that we actually given to the National Treasury, it tells you, Mr. Speaker, our loans in this country keep on ballooning because of exchange rate. Mr. Speaker, many members do not know that a change in $1 shilling has a resultant force of 46 billion debt. So, Speaker, this debt will be paid by many other generations in this country. And there is need to actually, we put proposals on how to actually manage this public debt, Mr. Speaker, or the rise in the exchange rate in our country. Two things, Mr. Speaker, are very fundamental. Why this exponential exchange rate going up every day? Mr. Speaker, number one, the oil marketers, Mr. Speaker, in earlier part of this year, experienced shortage of dollars to the tune of 500 million. As the demand for dollars rose, Mr. Speaker, and interest rates in the United States, the owners of the dollars, shot up and become attractive, then it caused what we currently call an artificial shortage on dollars in our country, and of the exchange rate in our country, Mr. Speaker. Towards making repayment of our debts easier, Mr. Speaker. And this is why we are saying, Mr. Speaker, we want to run away, Mr. Speaker, from domestic borrowing.
Can you give McClap the mic?
Mr. Speaker, I'm saying what we need at the moment, Mr. Speaker, is we need to do more to attract the dollar in our country, Mr. Speaker. And what plan do we have for Treasury? We are telling Treasury, run away from expensive loans, the domestic borrowing. Let's go for concessional loans that have a long period of paying and a bigger grace period, so that we are able to actually restructure our loans and we'll be able to pay and reduce our fiscal deficit, Mr. Speaker. For example, Mr. Speaker, we've just passed our supplementary budget here. What supplementary budget? That's S1. Members do not know it was an increase. Why? Because we are trying to accommodate shocks of foreign exchange rate. Mr. Speaker, the dollar is putting this country in a quagmire. So, Mr. Speaker, it is also responsibility for this parliament, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that let us live within our means as a country. The moment we do a balanced budget for Kenya, Mr. Speaker, that is when we shall run away from the Bretton Woods institutions. Mr. Speaker, I want to challenge these members and challenge this country, Mr. Speaker. Which country in the world, Mr. Speaker, has survived because of loans of World Bank and IMF? IMF will always use their loans and World Bank to colonize Africa, to ensure that Africa do not match those big economies, Mr. Speaker. It is only what comes out from our country that will change Kenya. It's not what is borrowed from the Bretton Woods institutions, Mr. Speaker. No country in the world has ever able to grow their economy because they will always create a chink in their dollar, like the Americans, Mr. Speaker. Whenever they have an issue in their inflation rate, they create a problem for all of us. And when they create a problem, that problem of the dollar has a multiplicity effect, what in mathematics we call multicollinearity. Multicollinearity is the effect of one independent variable results into a problem of many other independent variables, Mr. Speaker. And that is what is happening in our country. So, Mr. Speaker, we encourage production in agriculture, we encourage in production in tourism to attract more tourists in our country, and we also ask the Treasury and Central Bank to come up with RUTO policies to be able to actually control the rise and continuous rise of this dollar, Mr. Speaker, against our shilling, so that our shilling is strong. Even the fuel, Mr. Speaker, that you hear, Tanzania and so on, the cost of importing is the same. What makes the difference between Kenya, Tanzania, and our neighbors, Mr. Speaker, and Uganda, are the number of taxes and levies in the petroleum, Mr. Speaker. Otherwise, it is the same. Mr. Speaker, we as a committee have put up a recommendation which we think if the National Treasury will be able to put in place and the Central Bank, we should be able to turn around and our economy will be able to turn around and we shall be able to live within our means. And we also ask members, wherever they are visited by the President, let us not keep pressure to the head of state to an extent of making too many pledges and creating more hole in our country, Mr. Speaker. It is time, it is us who make the budget, and we know what is there, Mr. Speaker. And if we know what is there, let's not also put pressure to create bigger hole in our country, Mr. Speaker. I propose that going forward, Mr. Speaker, we need a balanced budget for Kenya so that we live within our means and do away with the loans that creates problem and creates what is called multicollinearity problem for Kenya. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Give him a clap. Emmanuel Wangwe.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I rise to support this report on expenditure of the Consolidated Fund Services under the Supplementary Estimates for Financial Year 2023-2024. Honorable Speaker, before I even go to the substantive debate, Honorable Speaker, allow me to thank the 12th Parliament to have thought it fit that, Honorable Speaker, they came up with this very good committee that now is able to bring out